That's Higher by Tom Grennan, which is short for Thomas Grennan. I'm Rob Jelly, and this is BBC Upload. I hope by now you know this show is the easiest way, known to humankind, for getting your work in front of a new audience. But this week, I thought I'd look at some of the tips and tricks of getting your work seen and heard elsewhere. Marketing, to give it its formal title. And it just so happens that a previous guest of BBC Upload and one half of the Conversation Hat podcast, Liam Taylor, works in content marketing and kindly agreed to sit down with me recently for a bit of a deep dive into the world of marketing and how he manages to stay organised as we approach the end of the year.
Right now it's good, busy. I'm sort of trying to wrap a few things up as we're October, but that is apparently the end of the year now. So I'm trying to wrap up a few loose ends and really get back into it early 2025.
Oh, okay.
Year's done, mate. Year's over.
We'll come back to this thought in a moment. So you're already actually skipping forward 3 months into 2025 at this point, and you're starting to go, that's how far you're planning ahead. You're looking at the new year at this stage now. We're still sort of 10, 12 weeks left of the year.
As a freelancer, if I want any time off over Christmas, I have to plan that now.
Good. Hey, this is good. This is a really great tip to start with. As a podcaster yourself, so with your Conversation Hat voice presenter hat on, are you conscious when you're recording an episode with Ben about where this episode's going to go, who it's for?
So the thing about the Conversation Hat is we try to keep it as time agnostic as possible. Ideally, I've just invented that. That is my phrase now. I like it.
We're absolutely backing that one. Time agnostic.
Good. That's going to be on my Wikipedia just as soon as I get a Wikipedia. Time agnostic. So ideally, a listener would be able to, in the middle of Q1 2025, listen to an episode that went out 2 years ago and it still basically be funny and enjoyable. So we generally keep the politics to a minimum, other than like our really broad strokes beliefs, which is, I promise nothing outrageous, I promise. So that's thing number one. There's exceptions to that, which is if we're going to be doing a seasonal episode like a Christmas one or a Halloween one, the topics of conversation are randomly generated, but there are ways to kind of push it and tweak it in a specific festive direction. So it's all about planning. It's all about spreadsheets for those sorts of things. So the Halloween episode, which is coming out a couple of weeks from now, we recorded about 2 months ago. And that's just because of how schedules align. We needed to do it that early in advance. But in terms of gearing the content in a more general sense towards how it's marketed, I've been to a lot of, I think, the same sort of masterclasses that you've been to. Spotify and Podbean are two examples of platforms that do quite good educational content. And I'm sick of hearing it as well as sick of saying it. It's all about video marketing now, which is not audio in the slightest. I resent that I've had to buy 5 cameras for my audio show, but here we are. So we have kind of found ourselves thinking, now that there's cameras on us, we're doing lens takes. We're doing we're looking down the barrel of a camera when we say things, which is immaterial to the audio version of the podcast, but it makes the visual video content elements slightly more engaging. But I do resent it.
Okay, why? I think I know why, but there must be a personal reason why perhaps that doesn't appeal, and also then why you've given into it.
So yeah, for folks, my background in general is audio. I'm a musician as well. I've been in bands, I release music and stuff, as well as doing podcasting and bits of video on the side. So the reason it's a frustration is because I feel like you should be able to make a thing, and whatever that thing is, it have value and be findable. Right? Yep. If I want to go and make a lovely watercolor painting, I should be able to put that somewhere that people who like that sort of thing can find it and go, blimey, that's quite a good watercolor. What's his Instagram? But that's not the world we live in. And you know, the frustration is from being a musician for so many years. I'm not in a position where the music I make can be performed very easily. Too many oboes, basically.
Yep.
So my music lives pretty much only online, and one would hope I could put it online and people would go, blimey, that's quite a good oboe concerto. What's his Instagram? But that's not how anything works, unfortunately. So it's about finding people where they are and trying to work out, right, who is the kind of person that would be into my music, my podcast, my watercolors? Where do they hang out online? What can I present them? But it's trying to meet people where they are. What can I present them with that will make them go, ooh, blimey, what's his Instagram? And right now it's video. It's social video. It's this short form TikTok Reels, YouTube's just announced you can go up to 3 minutes now. So
on the shorts,
yeah. Yep. If that's a thing, so you can truly make. I mean, we're getting into it now, but you can make 1 3-minute video and have it exist on these 3 big platforms and be discovered, because that's where people are. And just the reach on TikTok, for example, TikTok will 200 views is considered a flop on TikTok, because
really?
TikTok will TikTok will, you upload a video to TikTok will show it to 200 something people before deciding if it's any good. Those 200 views are TikTok working out, what is this video and what kind of person should like it. So if you upload a video, 200 people will see it, then TikTok will either go, it's not very good, is it? And show it to no one else, or it'll go, oh, it's this kind of video for this kind of person, and then push it out further. So if you break out of, let's say, 300 views, that video has found an audience, do more of that. We're getting really specific now. If you break that 300, do more of that thing. If you're sub 200, and I'm like, man, 200 videos, 200 views, and that's a fail. If I could get 200 views on anything I do, that's significant.
But there are 200-seater venues across the area, which would be happy to sell all 200 seats out and put a theatre performance on, or have some stand-up comedy. And there'll be budding comics who would love to do a stand-up show to 200 people. They would not consider that a flop. And I only stress that because I just want to... I guess really at the core of this conversation, the reason I wanted to chat with you this time round was to kind of break down some of this information, which is so tricky to understand. It's not hard to get. You do have to spend some time searching it out, but you can... It's understanding it and understanding it's going to change. Audio producer and content marketer Liam Taylor chatting with me about how to plan your creative diary, starting to touch on understanding where and how to share your work in other places. We will come back. Conversation Hat Podcast is a thing we've talked about on the show before, but one half of that podcast duo has a different creative hat on to talk about art marketing, content sharing. There are almost as many ways of labeling it as there are of doing it. So how? How do we fight through the crowd of others and find our audience beyond the walls of this here show, BBC Upload, of course? Well, Liam Taylor and I spoke recently about this very subject, and I wanted to take a spy at Liam's own personal viewing habits too, to understand some more.
That's an interesting question. I think, I'm not trying to be special or anything, but I do think I'm an anomaly. If I don't use social platforms the way they're supposed to be used, I'm an inherently difficult person, Rob. And you'll work this out over time. I'm just difficult to be around. I don't watch Reels on Instagram. I sort of, it'll take me a hot second to remember where to find them. If I'm watching Reels, it's probably by accident. So as a marketing person, that's my day job, I have to kind of check in with people who use Instagram the right way and just sort of go, just by the way, when I posted that thing, how did you find it? And I think part of that is because I work in marketing and content marketing. Scrolling through TikTok is a busman's holiday, right? I can see lots of videos of very well put together podcasts, people doing their poetry, oh, it's a lovely watercolor. I wonder what their Instagram is. But really, I'm just scrolling past them to try to get to the cats. I just want to see cats, man. That hasn't changed throughout my entire life. And I think maybe there's an element of that we as creators, we need to sort of embrace and think, why are people on these platforms? If it's at the end of a busy work day, maybe they've been yelled at by HR, they've had a terrible day, they're getting home, they're not trying very hard to cook their dinner because they're exhausted, they eat their dinner, they've put on Chaos, which they cancelled for some reason on Netflix, and they're scrolling through TikTok, they're sort of half watching Jeff Goldblum, they're sort of half watching their TikTok. Are they going to want to engage with your very intricate watercolor, or are they going to want to see cats? You know,
cats.
So maybe your strategy should just be split screen cat videos with your watercolor.
Oh, hang on. We've dove into another level.
We've gone straight in. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to ease us into it. I know.
Not at all. Let's get the scuba gear on. Let's get deep. So I'll follow up the point you just made with, is there a market for chasing the trend? And equally, is there also a market for people to make what they want to make and still find an audience?
Yeah, I think there absolutely is. I think it's about balance, and I think it is about embracing the change. You've sort of highlighted this idea of change already. I think it's about splitting your time, whatever you're going to do in terms of marketing, between what you feel creatively you should be doing, what is important to you, what matters to you, and what is actually going to get the views. I think if you chase exclusively one of those paths, you're not going to have a good time. So the reason we do the video side for Conversation Hat is not because, I mean, I do work in video, I love video. I don't really want to be doing video for the Conversation Hat, but I'm doing it in order to reach people. But that hasn't affected the quality or the release schedule or the content of the podcast itself. We've managed to keep them completely independent. So we've, dare I say, retained our integrity by sticking to the podcast as is. We've just done this video side as an add-on. I think you've got to play both sides of the field. And finding the time for that is hard. As well as the expertise, you know?
Yeah, that was going to be the sort of the follow-up is how do you make the time for that when people are trying to do these, a lot of the time, creative outlets on the side of a job, maybe it's still uni or in college, and you know, you've got a decent following on social media, maybe you've got your audience and your content, you know, like sort of to a sort of point. How do you then find that extra time to add that level, and can it be done on a budget? I think there's another really key thing is I've seen some really great interviews of successful podcasters visualizing it for the marketing purposes, i.e. just capturing it on video to showcase it on TikTok, showcase it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And a lot of them have said they're just using their mobile phones. They're just popping it in a small tripod, hitting record, and then uploading that content. So, does that work as well as some of the successful podcasts, which is, it's easy to say when you're successful, but does it work?
It can. It totally can. There's a few threads to pull on here. I think, first off, yes, you can absolutely do it for free. You can do it on a budget. If it's just you as a solo creative wanting to do a podcast, you can talk into your camera. If you really want to, you can use that audio. You can pull it into a free video editor. They do exist. You can pull it into a free audio editor, Audacity, for example. You can snip it up and you can upload it, and then you can have the video as the visual marketing assets as well. You can totally do it. And I would always suggest, if this is an avenue you want to go down, the thing you're not gonna probably comprehend as you start is how much time it takes. I think the other thing you need to work out is, what do you want out of it? Are you trying to create a personal brand, for example? So I might repurpose some of this and stick it on TikTok, just saying, we'll see what happens. If you're doing anything in the world, you probably want to try and develop a personal brand to grow yourself, in which case I could stick a camera on myself and record what looks like a podcast. Do I actually need to release a podcast? And this is going to explode your head. So put a towel down. Most of the podcasts you see on TikTok or Reels, they are not podcasts. They are people recording themselves in front of a microphone with a black curtain and a fern in the background. They are not podcasts. They are made to look like this person is guesting on someone else's podcast, but they are. Yeah, I can. Yes, for the listeners, Rob's head is physically enlarged and exploding. Yeah, I know.
Of course they are. Of course they are. Like
it's the most direct way to grow your brand is to have this authority of looking like you're on someone's podcast. Put a logo in the corner that you just made in Canva. Someone else's show.
I'm sorry that I'm unpicking this into so many different avenues, but surely that is taking so much more time than just capturing the recording of the episode and using clips of it to post.
There is no podcast, is what I'm saying. So it isn't that the podcast doesn't exist at all. So you are just making content that looks like it's a podcast. For example, if I take what the conversation hat is, we're doing the video side of things. If I was just doing the video, I would be able to take out the time it takes to edit the audio, which takes longer than the video because I cherish it more. I would take out the voiceover intro I need to do, the adding the audio stingers, the leveling, the compression, the maximizing, the uploading to whatever your host platform is, and the marketing of the specific podcast itself. I can put all of that in a bin, just do the video side of things because that's what's going to actually grow my audience. And it also has a degree of greater authority because you can make it look like you as a content marketer are guesting on someone else's podcast. Aren't you important to have been invited onto their podcast? You just got to get a different curtain and a different potted plant every time you want to make it look like you're on a different podcast.
And there, my friend, is the reason why I have a different backdrop behind me and, for some strange reason, a cactus plant next. We've covered quite a bit this week when it comes to sharing your art with others, or content marketing, if you want to use the buzzwords. So to finish my conversation with this week's guest, Liam Taylor, I had some quick fire questions to hopefully cover off anything you've thought of whilst listening to us chat. Where's the best place to find you and find out more about this world for those who want to nail it down?
So if you want information in general about podcasting, like we said earlier, a lot of the apps will do these masterclasses. They will, for the foreseeable future, be telling you to do video, but it's worth checking in with them. So Spotify and Podbean come to mind as like two ones that are doing really great masterclasses. The podcast I do is at Convo Hat Podcast on all of the apps, or it's The Conversation Hat if you want to hear it in action. I, as a marketing person, am at LT Content Marketing on Instagram. If you want to just ask me a question, I have a few videos about marketing up there. DM me. I will talk about, as Rob knows, I will talk about podcasting. Put a penny in me and I will not stop. And I'm also a LT guitarist as a musician, if that's something that interests you. The one thing I would say is that if you do find videos from like marketing professionals or podcasters, don't ever listen to one of them because they might be trying to sell you a thing. So cross-reference your ideas, maybe get like a catalog of 5 or 6 people talking about podcasting and then try to like see what the common threads are. It's that old thing of like, everyone's trying to sell you something because it is capitalism right now still, but there is truth in there. You've just got to sort of dissect it. That wasn't a quick answer, and I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. But it goes to say it's the same as if you're looking into sance. You know, if you go 3 scientists to do the same experiment, they all come to the same conclusion, then you know that's the thing. Whereas it's different answers, you start questioning perhaps, well, I can't believe it. Hey, I know my science teachers will be proud of me for remembering that nonsense from about some years ago. Yeah. Someone is starting, they've got an idea in their head right now. They're sitting there listening to this and going and feeling like, yeah, today's the day I'm going to start this podcast. What is the basic minimum amount of kit we would need or we can do that with?
Record audio into your phone. You already own a phone. It's fine. Record 10 episodes. That sounds like loads, but do it. If you record 10 episodes, it puts you in the top less than 1% of podcasters. Is it the top?
I thought it's 3%, but you might be more accurate than I will.
I think it's, if you do 3 episodes, it's the top 3% or something like that. But if you do 10, you're like less than 1% in terms of number of episodes, because people just have an idea, they do one episode and they give up. So do 10. If you can't think of 10 episodes, maybe just do a YouTube video, just a standalone one YouTube video. And again, you can just do that with your phone, which is in your pocket right now. Don't overthink it. If you can do 10, you can then decide, all right, maybe I spend 100 quid on a Bluetooth mic or a headset or something, and then actually try to like edit it in Audacity. But I get really sad seeing people who've spent like £1,000 on podcast kit, and then they record one episode and they're like, it's work. I'm not gonna do more work. Never mind.
It takes time.
Do 10.
It takes time. But it's worth it once you get going, and you make it part of your habit, make it part of your routine as well if you can. Oh, are there any tips for picking a name?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of similar sounding names. Go to ChatGPT and ask it to come up with 10 podcast names, and then use none of them. And don't go anywhere near any 10 of them, because thousands of other people have done exactly the same thing. You can tell when stuff has been written by AI because there's words like quirky, a word that I use proudly, quirky. If quirky is in copy for something, it means ChatGPT probably wrote it. You can map out on Google Trends use of the word quirky. It's exploded in the last 12 months since ChatGPT appeared.
Wow. Okay, well,
don't use the word quirky is my tip.
But use the tools. This is nice.
Yes.
Use the tools to help you find something genuinely original and that suits you in your personality as well. How easy is it to get a podcast online? Like how much time does that take?
Getting a podcast online is the easiest bit of having a podcast.
Mate,
I'm not saying it is easy.
No, but once you've made it,
it's the easiest.
It's the easiest step to get it up online and then just share it with people and get it out there. And as I always say, I always try to make sure that I say this every week on Upload. Don't wait for permission. Please do not wait for permission. If you wait, you might be waiting a lifetime for it. And if you really need someone to give you permission, consider me doing so right now. I am telling you to go and be creative. Go and make that thing that you have the idea for in your head. Content marketer Liam Taylor, who is also 9/18 of the Conversation Hat podcast, which you can find online in all the good podcast spots. Plus, as Liam said, if you have questions about marketing your content online, that's what he does in his day job. He's more than happy to chat. You can find him on Instagram at LT Content Marketing. You're very welcome to ping him messages. Cheers, Liam.